Well, we have some breaking news here, some monster jobs figures for you. 236,000 jobs created in the U.S. economy last month. That is way, way, way ahead of expectations. And the unemployment rate fell to 7.7%. Welcome to the News Hub. I'm Simon Constable. We're going to have that and more and some great analysis on this. The unemployment rate down 0.2%. If you missed that, 236,000 new jobs. Quite amazing. The expectation was 160,000, so really quite impressive there. We're going to have huge analysis now, and let's go straight to Sudeep Reddy for an instant reaction analysis on this. Sudeep, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Simon. Obviously a huge number, totally blowing away expectations, and it should give people a lot of confidence that the economy is not falling apart the way it has every spring, even though there are still some hurdles that we have to face coming ahead with the sequester and some of the other risks around fiscal austerity.
Yeah, so this actually wouldn't include any part of the sequester, which was the forced spending cuts of the federal government. That wouldn't include that, so that might hit this when we get the next figure a month from now.
Yeah, we're really going to have to see once the spending cuts truly take effect and you start to see furloughs, which will of course restrain hiring, and perhaps government contractors pull back, lay off people. You really don't know the extent to which that's going to affect the next set of payroll numbers. It could be 2 months before we see that. So there's still some significant problems ahead that would lead people to not get too worried about a report like this. But this is probably the highest we've seen the initial figure, not necessarily the revisions, but the initial figure for monthly payrolls in quite some time.
Yeah, in quite some time. And one of the things you may remember in the campaign last year, when Romney, if you can, was saying he's going to create something like 250,000 jobs a month for 4 years, which would give us a tremendous amount of new jobs. This is actually getting quite close to that. 250,000 jobs a month, if it's month in, month out, would really be phenomenal, especially for all those people looking for a job.
It certainly would be phenomenal if we could keep this up. It's still not fast enough to really bring this down at the pace we want. If you look at the unemployment rate dropping, though, that's still yet another good sign. We're finally getting past that 125,000 range where you were just treading water. And so seeing the unemployment rate come down is a good sign. A number this strong, though, on payrolls could reignite some fears that we've seen over the last few months that the Fed would pull back on its bond buying program, not necessarily keep its foot on the pedal so long. There's probably not that much risk of anything like that happening anytime soon, but it's certainly going to be an undercurrent in the discussion in the coming days with payrolls this high and unemployment dropping like this.
It's going to be a very interesting day. Stay with us, Sudeep. I want to get Phil Izzo in now, who's been going through all the numbers in detail. Thanks for being there, Phil.
Hey, Simon.
You've been going through this with a fine-tooth comb. What did you find?
Yeah, I mean, this is basically a very good report. I mean, almost every industry added jobs. The only cutbacks we saw were in the government sector, which has been steadily cutting jobs, and that probably was going to get worse as the sequester takes effect this month. And that hadn't even happened yet, and the government was cutting jobs. And then the only other industry that cut jobs at all was transportation, and that's probably a seasonal thing as they wind down after a really big holiday season. Everything else, manufacturing, construction, healthcare, education, all of those had nice, strong job gains this month.
Now there's some other figures within that report that tell us some key information. One is the participation rate, because everyone who lives in the country is not in the workforce.
Yep.
Some people are in, some people are out. Tell us about that.
Yeah, the participation rate actually fell a little bit this month, and that's one of those sort of like concerning things in an otherwise really good report. We saw this big drop down in the unemployment rate to 7.7%, and a good portion of that was people getting jobs. About 130,000 people who didn't say they were employed last month or employed this month. That's good. But the labor force declined, and it declined by more than the people who got jobs. Basically what that means is we still have this enormous long-term unemployed problem where these people have been unemployed for more than 6 months, more than 12 months, and some of those people are getting discouraged and dropping out of the labor force. There is the labor force participation rate over the long term is dropping because baby boomers are aging and they're retiring, but there's also this issue of workers giving up who basically can't find a job anymore, and that's a concerning factor.
Okay, back to Sudeep Reddy. Stay with us, Phil. Sudeep, One of the things we've been hearing out of Washington is the sequester might actually, halt the economy. This number would suggest otherwise.
This really shows the divide between the private sector and the public sector when it comes to hiring. The private sector, despite some of the fears we saw before, at least last month, looked through some of the noise from Washington. But if you look underneath, when we look at the payroll figures from January, seeing the downward revision, it does leave some concern that the sequester could knock us off course yet again. We've seen year after year after year strong payroll numbers late in a year coming into the spring, and then everything falls apart in the spring. And so you have to be a little bit cautious when you look at numbers like this, given the historical record of payroll numbers falling apart as you get into the middle of the year. And it would coincide perfectly this time with the sequester actually leading to real cuts in jobs and a real hit to the economy when it comes to economic growth.
Okay, we're going to go back to Phil Izzo for a final word. Phil, what do you want to add?
Yes, I mean, I think the bottom line is that this is a really good report. We're seeing some of these indicators of hiring, like hours worked. People are working more hours, even with the snowstorm that happened during the month, and that usually will drag hours down. So the fact that they went up means that there's more demand that employers need to get more out of their existing workforce, and eventually they're going to have to hire more people to do that.